So hi everybody, I'm Suraida Nañez-James. Thank you for being here, hanging in there. I hope you enjoyed lunch. Again, I am the CEO and founder for the Gulf Ridge Institute, and I also have a science background, mostly marine ecology and fisheries ecology. That's what I did. Those were all my degrees. I also taught and have been teaching for science communication, K-12, and all the things, education and engagement, including community engagement. For more years, there's a lot of young people here, so probably before you were born, a couple of decades of that. So I proposed this particular session because I wanted to showcase just exactly what this is: ecosystem balance, ecosystem and environmental balance, right? When we look at an ecosystem, we often forget that we are part of that system. We're not just connected to nature, we are actually part of nature. And within that, because of who we are as a human species, we have not only the responsibility, but also the responsibility to respect the resources, which I don't like to use the word resources. We often, in my community, refer those to as our non-living relatives, non-human relatives, right? We have our water, which we consider a living entity, as well as everything that is living from the microbacteria. So is there any microbiologists in here? No. I'm in a data place right now, so it's a very different space for me. But you have from that microbe, right, to the things that we're going to talk about within our panel that I'm going to introduce in just a second. Those are the things that we need to also consider when we're collecting data, and to realize that every single data point represents some kind of life, whether it's the water that we're measuring, the currents, that energy that it's providing for us, all the way to the turtles and the amazing whales that these individuals are going to be talking about right now. And then how do we actually have balance in that? I was happy to hear Marcus and I, he did his session, and I was happy to hear that, because with GCOOS data, I would hope that a lot of our industry partners consider some of the data that these individuals are going to talk about, because it talks about the life that we have within the Gulf of Mexico, right? What people recognize in our communities. Just a quick question: can anybody here name the 5 sea turtles in the Gulf? Can anybody name 4? Okay. So if that was a difficult task, right? Then we also need to educate ourselves and have balance with when we're collecting that, to understand what we are collecting and why we are collecting it as well, right? If we can't name 5 or 4 or 3, or most people can name 1, but 5 of our turtles within that. I'm also just learning about the rice well, which Megan's going to talk about in a second. How many of you have heard about the rice well? Okay, so more than the 5 turtles, that's good. But you know that turtles exist within that, that's a good thing. Again, just want you to kind of open your mind a little bit onto what we can do together, right? Because within that balance in that ecosystem, we also have to be willing to work together and integrate these things that we are doing. As scientists, we have a responsibility to not only what we are doing within our own groups, but to the communities that it is affecting. If you look at here, I took these directly from our GCOOS site. We have healthy ecosystems and living resources. We have human health and safety, coastal hazards, marine operations, and long-term environmental variability. So all of these things, for those of you who did not know, when I came in a few years ago, I've been working in the Gulf. This is my home. I've lived here forever. Went to school here, went to Louisiana, all the places. But I had not heard much about what GCOOS did, even though I knew Chris forever. We've known Chris and I have known each other for a long time. I didn't really know what GCOOS did. And when I started kind of going into that system, I started realizing, I'm like, this is some really, not just cool data that you guys are collecting, but data is power. But unless we know how to use that, how to interpret it, or we help others interpret it, it really can't be used other than probably by the people in this room. And that's another thing you need to look at is you just take 5 seconds and look around. We've talked about this before. Who is missing in this space when we're talking about data collection? You don't have to say it out loud. I'm not going to ask you to name 5 Torbians or people who are missing in this room. So communities, right? The communities that rely on this data, not just from the perspective of the scientists, but who are asking. So I work a lot with local organizations, grassroots organizations, communities that are frontline communities. If you do not know, the Gulf is our frontline communities. We are like literally at the edge of everything. And we take the brunt of everything. Hurricanes, the development that comes with that, sea level rise, everything. That's why the Gulf is so important, because we bear the burden of that. But we have GCOOS collecting amazing data, not just for the people in this room, but something that could actually be used to do all of these things right here on a more local level and also regional level. I am really glad to see young people here. I say young because in my mind I'm still like 20, but I know that I'm not. Wells feels like 20. My body says differently. But to also understand that this generation is the next generation that's coming up. So I'm glad they're in this space, but to be more inclusive, maybe I should have invited you to some of these panels so you can talk about your research. But I just want to close before I introduce Ryan and Megan. Just to think about that, right? This is all of our survival in the Gulf, right? This is everybody's, not just one certain industry or a certain sector. And if there's ways, we can loop back, if there's ways to involve communities with what we're doing, and empower those communities to use the data to make decisions, not just for themselves, but at the local, regional level, national level. That is probably an invaluable service that we can provide. So I just, again, want you to think about that just for a little bit, and to think about what balance means. Because I think we can all agree there's a little bit of imbalance right now. And I'll just leave it there. We have 2 presenters today who thankfully took my invitation to come on this panel. And then we have 2 videos from 2 people who could not be with here today, Marcus and Philippe Tissot, who provided a video for us to share some of their work, as well as share some of the things that, how are they using GCOOS data in their everyday work. So for you guys, just present yourself, who you are, and then we'll start with Megan, and flips over.
Hi, I'm Megan Howson. I'm with GCOOS as their marine biologist working on the cetacean and sea turtle atlas project. I'm gonna switch.
Yeah.
Okay, so cetacean is multiple species of cetaceans. We kind of grouped them, but one of the biggest ones we have conversations right now around is Rice's whale, and then sea turtle atlas covers all the sea turtles within the Gulf. That's a little bit of a newer project, so we're not quite as far along with cetacean, but we're trying to pull together a bunch of different data sets, both for population, anthropogenic, and environmental data. So Suraida mentioned earlier, how do we kind of increase data access and help people interpret this data? Some of the data sets can be found in multiple different places. It's not just GCOOS data, but it's very time consuming both for the researchers to try to go through and access 15 different portals or contact individual researchers who are more than happy to share their data, but you have to wait for them to answer their email and then pull it in and put it in the format that you need. So that's just a time barrier. Or for for some of the members of our communities, some of our restoration managers, they might not have the background to say, for this particular population, here are the anthropogenic factors that impact them, or here are the environmental factors that impact them, and also which data set to use. Some of our panelists earlier mentioned how it's very different when you're talking about what's going on in the surface of the water column versus going down several hundred, if not 1,000 meters deep. Those are two different data sets that you're going to be looking at. So we're able to kind of pull those in and direct our users to, for this species, you want to look at this data set. And here it is, all in one place and formatted, ready for you to use, all within the same portal. We kind of saw with cetacean how useful it is, even for us. A couple months ago, we were asked to pull together a bunch of different data sets for Rice's whale, and what that would have been a several-day project to, even though we knew exactly where the data was, to actually pull it all into one place turned into about an hour or so, because all the data was right there and it was clicking a few buttons, and now it was in one nice figure ready to use. We also have a couple different models and dashboards. So the model shown at the bottom is vessel strike lethality. I want to make it very clear, this is not the odds that a strike occurs, but if a strike were to occur, what's the damage that it would do to that species. And then we have some dashboards. So this is just trying to take some very dense data that might not be very user-friendly to look at and put it into something that's a little bit easier for them to use and have a lot of different background information so they don't need that subject matter expertise. We do also have some education and curriculum materials in there. In a past life, I was a middle school and high school teacher, so it was nice to kind of go back to that and try to reach the communities. The students really have a knack for picking up how to use the data and how to use the data portal, but trying to provide that scaffolding for them to how to approach the problem and what are some of the questions they could be asking. And lastly, I also want to touch upon, we're trying to increase some of the data that we're generating. So I've been working with Bob to build an acoustic classifier with Guardians. So these are for some of our partners who might be collecting the acoustic data, but they don't have either the species expertise. If you are a fish person, looking at cetacean acoustics is two completely different things. Or for me, the opposite. We have a lot of people who are interested in some of the fish data, and they can show me the calls all day long, and I have absolutely no idea what I'm looking at. I'm improving on that, but to have a classifier that is able to go through and process that for them, and also much more quickly. So this Guardian processes in a couple minutes what would take me several months to go through and do manually. So we're taking data that's coming from a variety of different sources, primarily through all the different glider pilot partners that we have who are collecting this data, but it's not their background. And this is showing the model and also what the model is looking at. So these are all Rice's whale calls, and the green box is highlighting what the model found interesting about that call when it identified it. So we started with Rice's whale. We're at about 98% accuracy with that, but we also have classifiers started for sperm whales and black grouper. And the ultimate goal would be any interest in cetaceans, any interest in fish, eventually maybe even sea turtles, so that's a much newer field. Somebody could send in the acoustic files and we could send them back. Here's what species you detected. Now they can actually use that data to make the scientific decisions rather than spending months to years just processing and figuring out what they had. And with that, I will pass it over.
Go ahead, Matt.
Thank you. Afternoon, I hope everyone's still awake. So, all right. I'm about 50-50. Might need some coffee after this. But my name is Hannum. I'm one of the research technicians for the Flower Garden Bank's National Marine Sanctuary, specifically looking at the water quality parameters. But we are a very close-knit, connected team where everyone's kind of working on the same projects as a crew. And I don't know if did anybody follow the Artemis mission? Everyone should have, honestly. But during the post-trip press conference, astronaut Christina Cook had a beautiful description of what a crew was, and it's a collective of people with the same, not only the same goals, but the same kind of inner passions and really the drive and that interconnectedness, which Suraida, you touched on really great. I apologize, I'm going to use the word resource a lot.
Okay,
because that's what the sanctuary is. It is a resource. It is a public resource. It is the national parks of the ocean. The National Marine Sanctuary System comprises of 18 sanctuaries, as far as the recent one in Lake Ontario, all the way out to the Hawaiian Islands, American Samoa, and the Pacific Islands. But for the Flower Garden Banks National Marine Sanctuary, we're the only sanctuary in the Gulf of Mexico. We're actually one of the northernmost coral reef systems in the Gulf and the Atlantic. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the Flower Garden Banks just working within the Gulf area. I'm not sure if everyone's necessarily heard that we expanded back in 2021 from our original 3 banks of Stetson, west and east, to now all 17 banks heading out towards the east, towards New Orleans and Louisiana. And kind of touching on a lot of the regional aspects of what GCOOS is. The sanctuary, since its designation back in 1992, has always been really focused on the sanctuary and everything that's within its boundaries. But as we all know, putting lines on a map doesn't really tell the ocean where the boundaries actually are. And one of the things that we've learned as we've expanded and as we're trying to catch up with our monitoring program to reach all 17 banks is that we need to have a more regional look at how we're trying to do things, as opposed to just focusing on our individual banks. I apologize, there's no other slides. You're just going to have to stare at this map for a while. But so a lot of what we've been doing since 1992, doing our monitoring program as an interagency agreement with BOEM, really is focusing on what's happening on the reef banks in the shallow sections, 20 to 40 meters in depth. And we were using a lot of, diver installed instruments, from seabirds to Xylem products, and recently the installation of SOFAR buoys, really trying to capitalize on the real-time telemetry aspect, because it is, as a lot of you know, very difficult to get out 100 miles offshore and beyond to these deeper regions. And for the longest time, we've been collecting the data, but we really haven't done anything effective to archive that data or even share that data beyond just our own internal use. Sure, you could, ask us for the data if we're begrudging about it. You could FOIA us if you wanted to. But we really wanted to, as a resource, the data is also a public resource to all of you as well for this area. And we really wanted to capitalize on that more with the development and integration of new technologies. So one of the early on things that we did when we installed the SOFAR buoys was actually get with GCOOS and helping us to integrate that into the NCEI program. Big props to Philemon. Thank you very much. I know those SOFAR buoys were a giant headache. But, don't worry, we're getting more. But, it's been a great thing. It's been a great use, not only for our individual purposes, but we actually had a lot of people reach out to us since the addition of these SOFAR buoys, not only through GCOOS and getting them on the NCEI. We've actually been reached out through the National Hurricane Center. It turns out that they use these SOFAR buoys to help their models, which we all apparently know are ineffective now. But they've also been a great public resource to the community. I know we've had a lot of conversation about how do we reach out to our communities. While we are still working on it ourselves, one of the biggest benefits that we've heard from constituents in the recreational and commercial fishing industries is these are a great resource for understanding what the conditions are going to be out. Is it worth looking at these faulty models to determine, is it going to be a 2-foot wave or is it going to be a 7-foot wave? It's hard to tell, but the SOFAR buoys that we've had, that we've been able to put through on our own dashboard and through the SOFAR dashboard as well, has been a very useful product to the community at large. Now, we are looking to expand those. Jorge mentioned that this morning in part of the 5-year GCOOS funding plan. The funding that would be kind of co-opted over to the sanctuary would go to extending the infrastructure for the SOFAR buoys, really trying to reach out onto the eastern side. A lot of what we have just is there on the west, as I mentioned, west, east, and Stetson Bank. We really want to kind of get out into the eastern side, starting with Bright Bank, which is a bit more there central, and then from there, kind of reaching out, going as far as McGrail and Rezac Bank, where we've actually recently installed mooring buoys for additional fishing access. But then again, expanding on that, as well as addressing the past as well, all of that data that we have been collecting since 1992 that we really haven't done anything with, we've been able to fortunately have some extra hands help us out thanks to GCOOS, both with Sean Reagan and with Kelly Drennan going back through our historical data sets and analyzing those, compiling those, and then getting those archived and passed over to NCEI as well. So we are catching up. We still have many more years to do. We're currently about mid-20 teens, and getting all the way back to 1992 is going to be a bit of a challenge. But we are, again, and I circle back, we are a public resource. All these things that we're trying to do are to your benefit, to the researchers, to the industry, but to the local communities as well, the ones that like to go out and go enjoy the wahoo fishing that happens in January, or the grouper fishing, the snapper fishing. The red snappers are fantastic. But it is, and also for the diving community too. You know, it is for everyone. It is your public resource. I hope everyone can be able to get involved at some point. Go see it. I'm sorry, again, I didn't put pictures of the manta rays or the sea turtles. I don't think anyone's ever seen a rice whale out there, but last reporting is there are white sharks now. There's been a few tags that have pinged off the sanctuary banks with those. But touching on the community aspect, if you want to go ahead and move on to the next slide, I would be amiss if I didn't give you guys some opportunities to join in our community. The first one is that the sanctuary is currently beginning the process of its 10-year management plan review. Now, I will emphasize 10 years. We haven't done a management review since, I think 2012 technically, but this is a time, and the dates that you can see on here, so please take pictures, QR code, I think these are getting shared out as well. These are the public speaking times. So if you want to if you're aware of what we're doing and you want to see us kind of shift our priorities a little bit, you want to have that input, or if you want to see us doing more to expand within the expanded sanctuary and our research goals, hop in and give us your opinion. Let us know what you think. Add any comments or benefits. This helps improve us, which then gets it back out to everybody else. So I encourage, the first one is a virtual one, so you don't even have to leave your house. But the other two are at our office in Galveston, Texas. Both of those, the May 19th day is also the day of our Sanctuary Council meeting, which I encourage everyone to come and just spend the day with us, which then will actually lead me into my next slide, which is our Sanctuary Advisory Council. And we do, in fact, have some open seats open right now for enrollment. If you're interested in learning more, Laura here in front is currently on our council, and she can tell you how great and amazing it is. But we do have a few seats open there listed, 2 seats for commercial fishing, a seat for conservation, 2 for education, a recreational fishing seat, and a research seat. So this is another way to get involved, not only with the sanctuary, but with the community at large within that area. We're definitely looking for people that also have some influence in the Louisiana area, which has been a tough one for us to reach out to. But this is, again, another way, if you're in the Galveston area on May 19th, come learn more about what we are, what we do, and getting involved. And then the last one, I don't have a slide for it, but I will mention that we are hosting an open house on May 16th. That's Saturday before, where you can talk to all the staff, learn about everything that we have going on and everything that we plan to do, from our mooring buoy programs to lionfish dissections to our water quality and monitoring efforts, and talking with the council themselves while they're there. So, thank you.
Thank to Ryan and Megan. I'm going to show, again, they're really two short videos that were submitted to us. And yes, diving is great. So if you have not been, I contributed myself. I loved it every time I took the teachers out to the program. So that was my contribution to your flower gardens. I fed the animals there every single time I get there. Sean, can we get the videos? Okay.
Yeah,
Do you need the microphone so that they can be louder?
Let me try. Sorry, this computer is slow.
Has anybody ever been diving at the flower gardens? It's beautiful. Even if you feel seasick, it's still beautiful.
So I'll just say while I was getting up the video, when we did our reporting last year, which the 2024 annual report is out now, we were able to find that the coral coverage at West Bank was actually at 66% coral, not just just coral. East Bank was a little bit lower at about 55%, but that is, as far as we know, kind of communicating with our other partners, is some of the highest coral coverage in a reef that you can see anywhere in the world. So we are one of the more resilient reefs, probably, thankful to our kind of remoteness. But we are a healthy reef, and we remain a healthy reef, even despite bleaching that's becoming more prevalent, and other disease aspects that are inflicting other reefs.
Are we good?
I tried under it's working.
Yeah, are we good?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's working. Yeah.
Project entitled AI Method for the Quality Control of Water Level Observation. It's a joint project with GCOOS and NOAA, and here we go. So data quality is very important, of course, and it's even more important now for the calibration of AI models. And so what we need to do is remove unphysical devices.
Oh, now you. All right. I'm sorry, it's very slow computer.
Don't want to kill the owl.
Let me repeat.
Hi, my name is Philippe Tissot. I'm at the Conrad Blucher Institute at Texas A&M University Corpus Christi. I'm going to give you a very brief update of a new project entitled AI Methods for the Quality Control of Water Level Observation. It's a joint project with GCOOS and NOAA, and here we go. So data quality is very important, of course, and it's even more important now for the calibration of AI models. And so what we need to do is remove unphysical data points, fill gaps, and for water levels and many other data sets, NOAA COOPS is the gold standard. They do a great job. They have a team of 9 oceanographers. And so we're asking the question, can AI method reduce human involvement in this process? So the project started last fall. Dr. Tan Lee is the principal science investigator. And the team include Lindsay Abrams and her team at COOPS, Dr. Jorge Brenner at GCOOS, who you all know well, and Dr. Greg Gusek at Dusek Coastal Science and Consulting. So the project started. Dr. Lay did a trip to COOPS, visited stations. We've had several. We have meetings every 2 weeks with the COOPS team to really look at the data, define the problem. And we are in the midst of testing different AI architectures. You see here a graph of the architectures tested, including tree-based method, multi-layer perceptron transformer, a latent space method based on the JEPA method, and we're going with either direct classification or regression. So it's a broad scope there. On the right, you see some pretty good preliminary results for the JEPA method. We're testing over several NLON stations, including Honolulu, Newport, Port Isabel, Santa Monica, Pier 21, and a few more. We will be presenting the results so far at the DMAC 2026 conference, June 2-4. And also we have a parallel project that is based just for Texas, for the Tikkun historical data, and that is thanks to the Texas General Land Office. So Thanks for listening. Happy 20th birthday to GCOOS, and have all a great meeting.
Heather, the mic.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a couple of discussion points. Megan, if you want to come over here so you can be. Instead of having you guys separated. So we have a couple of discussion prompts. Is there any questions from the audience right now? So I have questions for them, but. And also, oh, we have one? Yes.
Steve DeMarco, GERG. Steve DeMarco from GERG. So, what's the status of the manta at the Flower Garden Banks?
The current status, like right now. So I'm sure there's probably been a bit of rumor. I wouldn't say like in a dramatic sense there's rumors. There was, I will admit, last year there was a significant amount of maintenance work that needed to be done on it that took roughly a year and a half to actually get all the work done and get the boat back in the water. That really did obviously affect our schedule for the summer season and getting offshore. Thankfully we had, when they're not problems, they're just challenges to overcome. And our community that we are in touch with has really stepped onto that. Not only were we chartering the vessel, the MV Fling, the local recreational dive vessel out of Freeport, a lot of our council members who were, commercial recreational fishermen that had vessels took us out. In some cases, they took us out on their own dime, which we really appreciate. For quick day trips, getting things done. We really did have to limp along, but we ultimately got everything we needed to get done. This year, that work package was much smaller. I was happy to say that the ship is out of the shipyard for its annual maintenance. It is back at the Texas A&M Galveston dock. It has I believe it's today, actually, it's going through its fleet inspection. So as long as it's able to check all the boxes off its fleet inspection and it passes, it will be in a sales status and we'll be ready to go. Our first trip happening early June.
Any other questions? All right, so I have a couple of questions for them, and you're more than welcome to chime in as well if you have an answer. The first one is, and maybe Megan, you can take this one. It says, what value is created when different groups use the same trusted data? And I did like, Ben, that you mentioned it was a trustworthy, validated, good science. So what happens when different groups use the same data? You've already alluded a little bit to that, but can you expand?
I think we get a lot of value just out of having a bunch of different perspectives. Specifically for cetaceans and sea turtles, people are going to be looking at different things. So we have some groups that are just looking at where are the populations. Some groups are looking more at what are the long-term trends, what are different price sources for them, how do they respond to different environmental factors. So everybody's coming at it from a different perspective, and having the same data source used, even just from a cost perspective. Okay, that's only one time that we are having to collect these observational data sets that then everybody can use for their different impacts. So that's freeing up funding to go do a bunch of different things and maybe make these observations for different species or in different areas, which is really useful. The more we investigate a singular data set, the more insights we're going to get, and then we can also share that with the communities and the public. And when we have a better understanding of it, it helps us communicate that with the public and our communities better and more clearly as well.
Right, did you have anything?
Yeah, one of the things that NOS, the National Ocean Service, is doing at large right now is going through and doing economic impact analysis for all of the sanctuaries. Something that's much easier to do for, say, national parks, where you can, have ticketed prices. You actually can get much more easily a numerical value. It's a lot more difficult with open ocean, open water body, where it's difficult to track who's going in and using those resources. So expanding out kind of beyond the data. Obviously, the data is valuable, and that's a hard thing to quantitate, because if it's getting out to the public and it's getting out to the recreational fishers, who are then using that data to go out and pay for the gas for their boats, pay for fishing gear, like all of those things get tied in to the larger economic impact of it, which is, as you mentioned, it's difficult to do for an ocean service, but NOS at large is looking to try and get out some numbers, and that's for all sanctuaries. I know they're currently working with ours right now to determine that.
Thanks, Ryan. So I had another question, and I can contribute to this one as well, because we're doing something currently in our community. It says, in what ways can collaboration lead to more access, equitable access to information and stronger decision making? One of the things, Ren was an NAS fellow that came to GCOOS and did an amazing job with, if you have not looked at it, so I suggest you do that, is a heat waves portal and the worksheets or the fact sheets that came with that. So working in my community, we have a lot of local decision makers that need kind of that information to make those decisions, but it goes clearly against our unhoused community. When are we seeing these heat waves, making the decisions to keep a lot of the cooling centers open, and the need to actually not close them down, because in my local community, a lot of the public resources are being taken away. So if we can come in with scientific data, and I can talk to them because I understand what we're talking about with heat waves, then that gives us, again, it's a tool. It's a powerful tool to make informed science-based decisions as to why we should keep these cooling centers open, as to why we need to be careful with kids being out there. There's a lot of medical information. We work with local doctors at Driscoll to talk about what happens when kids are exposed to extreme heats and how that affects learning. So again, looking at public health connections, and GCOOS has that data. I don't have to collect it. I don't have to research it. I don't have to make a fact sheet about it. It's already available to us. And if they don't trust me, they should trust all of the science and the brains in this room, because again, it's validated, trusted data that we can use. Okay. Do y'all have any contributions? For our decision making, definitely for Florida, I think, or just for
I think also providing the access to that data, you can give somebody the results and the conclusions from it, but depending on how long you've spent building a relationship with these communities, they might not necessarily trust that. So being able to give them both the conclusions and then also access to the data so that they can see how we got those conclusions, I think that really helps build that trust and encourages them to use the data to their own ability and for their own needs as well.
I mean, yeah, obviously sharing the access to our data in general is great from a management standpoint. As I alluded to with the management plan review that we're going through right now, and showcasing the data that we have collected over the last 14 years now. But I would also iterate that, especially for a site like ours, that physical access is difficult too. Not everyone has access to a boat that can get out there, let alone the money to charter a boat themselves. Really finding creative ways to get that data into the community is a big part, oftentimes through storytelling. You can throw numbers at people all day long. They're not going to care. But if you can connect with them and tell a story about this site, about how it's important and it's beautiful, but also how does it connect to you? We may be a site that's 100 miles offshore, but man, we still get river discharge from the Mississippi Basin. Like, people up in the Midwest dumping stuff in the waterways will eventually make it out to those areas and have impacts on them. So really trying to take the data and turn it into a story and a means to connect to the larger base, I think, is where the larger value is. And especially, I mean, we're talking about, how do we connect with people and help them understand and learn about GCOOS, you know, it's trying to find those stories and that connection.
So I just met Ryan today, and we're totally on the same wavelength because I was going to end with data storytelling. Data does tell stories. It depends on how you are telling that story. We're having a conversation with Megan as we wrap up here, how a lot of, at least back in my day, I had to choose. So and I didn't choose, but I kind of did my own thing. They're like, you need to either do your science or you need to do education. And I'm like, I don't understand why they're separated, because I've been to Hawaii, Rhode Island, Texas, wherever to take a meeting, and it's the same people. So while it's amazing to present to each other, we need to be presenting outside of that circle. And like Ryan put it so beautifully, there are stories to tell with the data that we're collecting. And I think somebody asked earlier during the industry, I don't know who it was, of like, how do we communicate the value of the GCOOS data and IUS and everything else. You also have to find what value means to you. So there's a dollar amount, but then there's that amount of, if the rice bowl goes extinct, like your kids, my grandkids won't ever see that. So how do you put a value on that? So that's something to think about too. And that storytelling through different means provides an opportunity to do that. I definitely, like you young people, like you guys are on the social things. I still struggle to put Instagram, and I'm really trying. But we do a lot of science communication workshops with graduate students, undergraduate, graduate, PhD, postdocs, to encourage them, yes, to learn how to communicate their science, but also how to work collaboratively with people who know how to do that. There are educators, there are professional science communicators. That is a job. If we had more of those in here to look at all the data that we're taking, how powerful would that be to tell the story of what GCOOS is doing? We're not just a data provider, we're a network of individuals, and we have relationships with each other. So I do encourage you, if you are writing grants, I know money is it's getting pretty low, but at the same time, what are you investing to get what you're doing out and beyond the group, beyond your circle, so that the data keeps going on and it keeps telling those stories of our Gulf. Thanks again. I hope you guys enjoyed it. One more. He's new, and so I give you another question.
Thank you. I just had to add this. Christy is pushing me there. Thanks. I love your discussion on engagement and getting things out. But as I learned in Alaska, working on the North Slope of Alaska with the Inuit, it is a two-way street. What I learned is, for example, up there in Alaska, indigenous knowledge and science has to be treated as equal. And so when you go into communities, ask what they have seen, what they observed, what they thought. They may not have the background to evaluate your data, but talking to parents and grandparents that have lived there for a long time and have experienced the changes is something you can't put a price on. And so just remember that in the engagement, it goes both ways. And some of the stuff you're going to receive in this engagement will not be the kind of stuff we're used to working with. Sometimes, as I learned, the story from a senior elder whaler is just as valuable as a data boy. They have the historical context we don't have.
I think we're going to be good friends. I say that because we just got a grant for that, and in my indigenous community, that's what we talk about, is the fact that our ancestors have observed these patterns for thousands of years, not decades, not hundreds, but thousands. And that is literally equal. The indigenous science of what they do is just as valid as that. But finding, again, that collaborative network, and again, a respect and responsibility for each other, how can we work together? Because this is amazing data, but what they bring to the table is also just as valid. So thank you, appreciate it. Thank you guys. They just look at me weird.
I just want to, hello. I just want to thank all of our presenters for our sessions.
I think I turned you off.
Can you hear me now? No, that's okay. I don't need it. I'll yell. As a multi-sector organization, we all collect data that are used for very different purposes and goals. And I think, sometimes the communities can perceive those goals and data uses as conflicting. And I think we're in a really unique position where we can work on the message of shared purposes and shared goals with data use. And so this is a conversation that I would like to see continue because we have conservation, resource management, industry-driven data goals, and we can meet in the middle on that. And I think developing some shared language for data use and the value of that is a position that we're sort of uniquely in to put together with all of the people at the table. So I want to thank everyone again for that. And we're going to head into a break for about half an hour. And so I will give you like a 2-minute warning call when I need you to come back in. And thanks again to everyone for the presentation so far and the great discussion. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you back in about a half an hour.